Okay, hi everybody, happy Pie Day. My favorite food in the world is apple pie. So, through the years, I've made a lot of apple pies. This one is my 36th apple pie, I think. Somebody asked me to make this pie for them, and I thought I would record it and share my recipe. So, you start out with half a cup of brown sugar, half a cup of white sugar, some cinnamon and nutmeg, and a clove that's mashed up in a molcajete, if you will. That's one for my Latino audience. Big ups to the Latin community. Anyway, you mix all that together. You gotta do the worst part of any apple pie recipe, which is peeling all the apples. And there's an old trick that my mom taught me, where if you put a spoon and an apple onto a pot and you shake it around, eventually it comes out as a peeled apple, and that reduces a lot of the work of peeling. You want to slice your apples into sort of slices. They don't have to be super even, nobody's really gonna look deeply at your pie unless you're at a pie contest. But I'm not at a pie contest, so I just slice my apples kind of willy-nilly, making sure they're kind of the same, but they can be a little different. Once you're done slicing all the apples, you want to put them back in the bowl where you had your bath, and then you want to pour your sugar mixture all over the apples and make sure it all gets to know each other. So this is called maceration. So the sugar absorbs some of the moisture from the apples and it makes it release into the pot. And eventually you'll notice that there's a lot of moisture sort of collected at the bottom of your bowl here. So while that's macerating, you want to work on the dough for this here pie. So for the dough, I'm following Stella Parks' recipe from Serious Eats. It's called Buttery Flaky Pie Crust Recipe. So this part of it is kind of, it's kind of sciencey because you gotta make sure all your ratios are right. So you want 225 grams of all-purpose flour, 15 grams of sugar, 4 grams of salt, and you want to cut up 2 sticks or 8 ounces of butter that's really cold. And it's really important to keep everything really cold. I put my butter back in the fridge, so here I'm cutting it and you can tell that it's getting kind of warm and mushy. So after I'm done cutting it, I put it back in the fridge and take it out before moving on to the next step. Once your dry ingredients are all mixed together, you want to take your cubed butter from the fridge and add it into the dry ingredients. Flatten it into little discs with your thumbs and then making sure that they're all covered in flour. So you add 115 grams of cold water and then you kind of push it against the sides of the bowl to create sort of this shaggy dough. You don't want to do any more mixing and put that whole system back into the fridge. While that's chilling, I'm going to get started on the apple pie filling itself. So the dough part is really scientific, but this filling part is really not that scientific. It's just how you're making like an apple jam. And as long as it tastes good to you, it's going to taste good in the pie. You'll notice that it gets really reduced and you get kind of like a syrupy apple jam, and you want your filling to be cold when it goes into the pie. You can do your apple pie filling on day 2 if you want, but your pie dough has to be made the night before for best results. I split the dough into 2 sort of equal halves, one for the top and one for the bottom. And I tried rolling out one of the sides, and I think maybe the kitchen was too warm or I'm making the mistake of handling it too much, but the dough got really difficult to work with and it got kind of sticky on the counter. The best thing to do is just kind of let it rest in the fridge. So I try to give it I try to salvage it as much as I can, but eventually I give up and I go to the second one. It's not even big enough for the fucking pot. So I bring out my second piece of dough, and this one works a lot better. Slightly because I have the experience of working with the first one, so I kind of know what my dough is. It's fine if it's a little cracky at the edges. Once I do this folding, this is called lamination. So once I fold it, that cracking sort of goes away and it comes into a very nice sort of even crust. So I roll out the dough as big as the pie tin that I'm using. I pick it up and lay it into the tin, and using some kitchen shears, I just cut off the excess of the pie. Then I put cling film over the top of it to make sure that it doesn't dry out in the fridge. Here's my rejected pie dough from my first attempt. That also is just going to get covered up in cling film and go into the fridge, along with any scraps or leftovers that I had. Okay, so now it's the next day. I'm taking out my rejected dough. As you can see, it's really tightened up in the fridge. So doing this sort of this periodic mashing technique is good to make it sort of rollable. So this is what's going to give you those really nice flaky layers of pie crust, because the butter gets trapped in the layers, sort of like a croissant for my French audience. Big up France. So it doesn't have to be super big, just long enough to cover the diameter of the pie tin that you're using. So once I'm happy with it, I cover it up and it goes back in the fridge as always. A lot of fridge in and out in pie making. Now this next day and all my things are cool, I can start filling the pie and try not to eat all the apples, because they will be tasty at this point. So do not eat all your filling before you bake the pie. I fill up my pie with all my delicious filling, and it looks beautiful. Look at that filling. Doesn't it look scrumptious? Yeah, it looks good. Anyway, I lay out my top pie crust and I cut it into strips so that I can lattice it on the pie. So here I am making a lattice. You can spend time making this look as beautiful as you want. You can make, I've written letters. Here's a picture of one of my friend's birthdays. I wrote his initials on the pie. The pie crust will bake no matter what shape it's in, and it'll taste good no matter what shape it's in. So I like doing a lattice just so it has airflow, but really you can kind of make whatever you want on top of the pie. So I do this lattice structure. You kind of pick up some of them and you put them down. I'm sure there's a way to explain this better, but you pick up the alternate ones and you put down a strip, and you pick up the other ones and you put down another strip. And then I crimp the edges with a fork, which is not the most beautiful solution, but it bakes and tastes pretty good. Then of course with shears I cut off the edges. I put cling film over it again and put it back in the fridge. I didn't have eggs for an egg wash. Usually I do an egg wash, but I didn't have eggs this time, so I did it's heavy cream and maple syrup, and this is my first time doing that, and it turned out pretty good, so I recommend it. I want to give this pie to the recipients in its full structure, so I don't get to take a slice before it goes away. So I made this little bowl of leftover pie crust and filling, just so I could taste what it was like and make sure that it didn't mess up in any way, and I get to eat a little bit of pie. Here I am arranging my baking sheet with all my things. So I bake my leftover pie crust and sprinkle it over ice cream, and that's a fun snack. It goes into the oven at 375 degrees, I think. It goes in there for about 30 minutes, and then you reduce the heat to 350, and then you put it in there for another 25 to 30 minutes. And there's the pie. You want to make sure that you let it rest for at least 4 hours. I know that it's really tempting to dig into it right away. I recommend making a smaller pie on the side that you can just eat really hot. Because if you let it rest, it gets good structure and it doesn't fall apart when you cut it into slices, and it comes out really nice. Otherwise, crumbles into a mush. Anyway, happy Pie Day. I hope you try this pie for yourself. Go make food. If you like this video, give it a like. If you want to say something, give it a comment. If you want to share it, give it a share. Okay, bye.